YellowTelescope's YellowTelecast, the best practices for the best practices, providing the medical industry's best practices to the medical industry's best practices since 2008. Are you a doctor? Do you work for a doctor? Do you want to earn more, be more efficient, retain your team, hire for success, or just want to have a better lifestyle? I bet you do. What should you expect from the podcast? A lighthearted, casual, fun, hopefully funny, informative, impactful, well-founded look at the medical industry from a pair of passionate, competent, confident, experienced, talented, questionably good-looking, unquestionably good-looking industry leaders, men of the Renaissance, if you will, and even if you won't, who enjoy Scotch whiskey, world travel, music, single malt Scotch whiskey, fine dining, not fine dining, family, art, and Ryan bourbon whiskeys while implementing intensive training and expert staffing, resulting in unparalleled growth. Listen to the podcast, and for more on how Yellow Telescope can help you grow, visit YellowTelescope.com for upcoming events, published articles, recorded speeches, past issues of our complimentary email newsletter, testimonials, and more.
Use one of those. Hey, Ed.
Hey, John. How have you been?
YellowTelecast Best Practices for the Best Practices podcast number
24.
Amazing. We've done it. And for those of you guys who can't tell, we're not really quarantined, but we are socially distancing, which is tough for Ed and I. And I'm at Chateau Hoff, and you're at the edifice.
That's right. Chateau Ed, or as we just shorten it to Shed, at the Shed.
Yeah, so Ed, myself, and future Tom are coming at you live and recorded from here in sunny Miami. And actually, if I wanted to actually say hello to Ed, I can literally turn like this and then wave out the window, and you can almost see me from across there. That's right. How close we live, probably 100 yards away or something like that. But I think 300 feet fits the minimum standard here during the coronavirus disease -19 of 2020.
That's right. In fact, we were originally going to do this podcast via tin can phone, but it was more of a limited technology than required currently. So here we are, stuck. But that's okay. We're very lucky to not exactly be roughing it, and can very comfortably have this. And heck, even though these are lean times, we do even have a whiskey to sample that we'll be able to discuss, each with our own selections, but lots to talk about. It's been a slow week.
Well, yeah, we've obviously been inundated with the concerns and fears, some very founded, some not, on everything going on with COVID-19, the coronavirus, and so on. Obviously, it's a very serious issue, and the entire topic today will be not so much about what's going on and what's going to happen, because there is an endless 24-hour news cycle anywhere you want with real experts talking about what to do and what the situation is and so forth. But we wanted to share with our clientele and listeners and followers a little bit of the way we're approaching things with our clients, how we're getting through this, and just some generally smart things to do to grow the business. So the reality is it's bad. It's going to get a little worse, and then it's going to get a lot worse, and then it might get a little better. Then it's going to get a little worse, but then it's going to get a little better, and then it's going to get better. And we've been through this sort of thing before and aren't too intimidated by it, and are pretty much well positioned, well poised, and ready to rock with it, and not really in the least bit concerned. Which is not to minimize what it is going to do to the economy, how it can be a very serious issue, and that there will be people that are sick and dying because of it. But given all of that, what can we do? So a little bit later, we'll be talking about that. But our attitude, as always, is we are a goes without saying business, which is to say, typically, it should go without saying that we treat our patients well. It should go without saying that we have good customer service in the office. And understanding that all goes without saying, most of our time year round is spent growing businesses and working with practices to make profit, not because we're pure profiteers, but we don't really need to stop a podcast or consulting me and say, oh, and by the way, you're not punching anyone in the face, are you? You're treating people well, because that should go without saying. And all of today's topics also really fit under that, which is to say, again, we don't wish to minimize what's going on. I think everyone almost is providing this disclaimer. We're not naive to it. Any one of our friends or family members could be affected. Any one of our clients or their friends or family members could be affected. We don't want anyone to be. So this is a serious issue. It's going to affect a lot of people. It is very bad. We're not minimizing it. We hope everyone is safe and sound, but that should all go without saying. The next question is, understanding all of that, which goes without saying, what can we do to best help the world and best help our clients and best do our duty in the ways that we can help. So we can donate a little money to charity. We can help out around the community. We can also do is make sure that there's minimal damages to our practices and that we come out of it stronger, because ultimately that is a valiant and righteous effort to keep our team members employed, to create stability for our team members, to provide great outcomes for those who seek it, to create tax revenue that will be important for the economy to help the less fortunate. And so you can both try to save lives and do things the right way medically, but then also work to keep your business going. And our topic, what we have expertise in, is exactly that, making your business successful. So we're going to be talking about that, although we understand all that goes without saying stuff. Your thoughts, Edward?
No, of course, I totally agree. It's sometimes a little bit delicate in the same way that, with a patient, for example, everyone says, well, we want to make sure we get the patient booked. But of course, that is assuming they're an excellent candidate with low risk. It's financially sound decision for them, et cetera. And so similarly, at this time, we're going to speak a little bit philosophically, but also with some actionable items about what you can do for yourself, for your staff, for your marketing. And while there are certainly going to be plenty of unknowns over the coming weeks and months, we are firm believers, and although it is our opinion, it's a strong opinion rooted in the last 12 years. Heck, we started this company, in 2008, and shortly thereafter, the market actually tanked in 2010. Everyone sort of has seen
a good idea.
Yeah, right. Nice timing. Timing's everything.
Yeah, we know some of the publicists right now are like, I can't believe I opened my practice a week ago. You'll be okay.
Right.
You get through this. This too shall pass, my friends.
Exactly. And so while it's our opinion, it's all rooted in the fact that we helped this to navigate, through the Great Recession. This is our next version of that. And as I know you're going to talk about, this is just the event of the decade that we're going to have to navigate through. But we like you said, we've kind of seen it before, and even a lot of our practices and clients have seen it before. But it's amazing some of the sentiment that we're seeing, that they kind of forgot it even happened. Same way that, when the economy was, amazing a week ago, and people were staffing and we're like, God, they just think it's 2010. Well, and as we'll talk about, it's almost kind of 2010 again from a staffing environment as well. So we'll keep that in mind as well.
Well, awesome. So like I said, it's business as usual here. The vast majority of our clients are actually doing quite well. No one's liking it. Everyone's going to lose a little revenue. Every single person in America has to move some cases back, but it's business as usual for us as well. And we're, again, well positioned, well poised, and have thought about this and have expected it to be coming, at least in some version, not COVID-19, but an economic recession. We've expected exactly this for a very, very long time. So with that, we're going to do business as usual as well. We're going to pour ourselves a little bit of whiskey. For the first time, I think, ever, we, other than our car cast where no one had whiskey because you can't drink and drive, I think this is the second time we won't be tasting the same whiskey. So did you want to go ahead briefly with what you're going to be pouring yourself today, Edward?
Sure. Went into the cellar and with myriad options, but picked out something I thought was kind of interesting, and then also had a little tiny representative detail of the scenario that we find ourselves in. I went with the Basil Hayden's dark rye, and it's interesting. It's not, it's pedigree, if you will, that you may be sipping on, or that we often like to indulge in. But I like to go with something a little bit simple. It is a blended straight Kentucky rye whiskey blended with Canadian rye whiskey and port. So almost on paper actually sounds terrible. However, I can tell you that it's delicious. I'm looking forward to having a little bit of a dram here, what with working from home. But also the connection to the current situation is that one of the things that they're known for from a branding perspective is they have what I describe, and may even officially be described as, the apron label, which sort of drapes over the bottle, and then it's got this, sort of copper band. It's kind of a nice presentation. The apron is absolutely ripped to smithereens because when we were bringing it home from the store last week, my girlfriend made sure to absolutely sanitize every item that was brought into the house. Just no regard whatsoever for the preservation of the label. So I can tell you that the outside of this bottle is as sterile as the inside of the bottle.
Yeah, and for the record, there is no definitive proof that whiskey over 130% or 130 proof cures COVID-19, but it does take the worries away, at least for an hour or two.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Someone, I think I've tried that in the past. Someone said, "Did you like it?" And I said, "Portive."
Portive. There it is.
To let me know how it is. While you're taking a sip of that, I've gone ahead and poured myself this. First of all, I'm really excited to be at home for this because I'm able to use my my Aurifors glass. Most people, when they get married, register for a bunch of stuff they're never going to use, like their cake plate for $118 or something insane. And we were no exception. And I think we have used the cake plate once, but something that I actually really wanted was to see if they had whiskey glasses. And it's sort of something, you get tumblers for ice, Tom Collins glass, that sort of thing, wine glasses, but you don't really get a whiskey Glencairn glass. And I identified the one company that both infuses their glasses with a beautiful sort of blue thingamabob from Aurifors and got an actual Glencairn glass or similar type of glass, probably not the formalized trademark Glencairn, but very similar whiskey glass to taste. Second, I've gone very high end for this. I had kind of thought about it, saying things are tough, people are struggling. All of us are being affected, and my attitude is it's actually a great time to look inward, to celebrate the time we get to have with our family. There are definitely negatives, again, goes without saying, all the goes without saying stuff, but I've been able to be home quite a bit with my son this week, and we're going to have a lot of fun family time this weekend. We're going to get caught up on all those Academy Award movies, and it's going to be a little bit of a grind, but there are some positives that come from it, and we're trying to look at that. And my attitude is, I don't buy whiskey to sell whiskey. I don't buy whiskey to trade whiskey. We buy just whiskey so we can enjoy it with our family, with our friends, and every now and then just because you really need one after a rough week. And so I've selected something very, very special, which is the Hakashu 18-year-old, which is obviously a Japanese whiskey, also one of the few cultures that traditionally does not shake hands. So I felt that it was not inappropriate. This has been sterilized many years ago because it's been sitting around my cellar, if you will, as well. This has gone outrageous. These bottles are like unfindable now. Now they're going for $500 to $1,000 a bottle. That's not what they should cost or what they originally cost, probably $100 for this bottle originally. But it's very, very good stuff. It's supposed to have just a touch of smokiness. Definitely on the kind of floral side, I guess you'd say. But it's kind of a traditional example of a true single malt whiskey made in the Scotch style, but made in Japan, and it's owned by Suntory, so it is part of Suntory Times. But the Hakashu 18, rare little taste. So this one is to all the folks out there, hoping everyone stays safe, and to everyone's health and happiness in this thing, hopefully passing real soon.
Cheers.
Mine is so much better than Ed's, I can already tell.
Oh yeah. Although I was looking for something sort of warming, something comforting, something relaxed, something sort of soothe, and I think I found that.
Does that have spice to it, like a typical rye, or does that port cut the spice?
No, I mean, just because it's also blended with the American rye as well as the Canadian, and the touch of the port. I think it really adds a little bit of sweetness, which I like, instead of even just the port barrel finishing, which is nice as well. But it's actually got the touch of port in there, and it's only 40 proof, so it's a sipper.
Yeah, little smooth guy, just like drinking straight vodka. That's all. Well, mine is delicious and exactly as represented prior to the taste, because I've slowly had about half the bottle over the last probably year and a half, or whenever I got it. And I will say, a lot of times we talk about how hot it is out here, and it's warm, but it's beautiful weather here in Miami. We're lucky. Another thing we're lucky about is we happen to be in a beautiful area and a decent place where we can get a little fresh air and so forth. And hopefully spring is springing throughout the rest of the country. But I got to tell you, it really is quiet out there. There's very, very little going on. So there's a little bit of peace and quiet. You might ask me, John, how quiet is it?
How quiet is it, John?
Well, it's interesting. There's a pterodactyl out by the pool at the pool bathroom, but you literally couldn't hear it when it went to the bathroom. The P is silent.
Yes. Yes, that's
Okay.
famous.
I think I'm going to be.
The crickets are the ones actually kicking the tumbleweeds down Collins Avenue here on Miami Beach. It's quiet, but as it should be in a lot of ways. I think, you know, we're particularly lucky to be able to sort of hunker down and, you know, help a lot of people from afar. So we're really good at social distancing, as good as we are being social. But yeah, it is quiet out there, and kind of as it should be. And it's real shame too. John and I have been texting back and forth about the fact that it's just real Chamber of Commerce weather out there. March in Miami is the best time. But oh my gosh, at least we can, you know, enjoy a patio, which is 6 feet away from another human being. So.
Yeah, actually, to that extent, we may do our next one outdoors because, you know, it's supposed to have fresh air anyway and kind of stay far away from each other. And we've been inspired, the two of us, obviously by the beards alone. You know, we're fans of Zach Galifianakis, so we've actually retermed our podcast for next time on the outside edges of two ferns. It's all for social distancing.
That's right. That's right. In fact, they're actually
just going to separate.
That's right. Just to make sure we have that distance.
That's
and
right.
We'll be bowing like the Japanese. We're not shaking hands.
They're not. Good.
No.
So should we actually help some folks here, other than with a little levity, which hopefully we've provided? Thank you for bearing with us for the good information. I'm thinking maybe if it's okay with you, why don't we start off? We've got a bunch of different things, a couple philosophical and a couple of just action. I want to start off with a simple action of how to deal with consultations in this time. Does that sound like a reasonable starting place to you, Eduardo?
Absolutely.
Good. So a couple of quick general items. As of the recording of this podcast, another one of these goes out saying things. It's a very fluid situation. Things are dynamic. Everything is changing in real time. We'll keep you apprised as things update and all those other disclaimers. So we don't know where things will be exactly in a few days, although I think that there's more clarity than there was a week ago on the way things are going. As of the recording of this on Friday afternoon, we know that essentially all, if not mostly all, practices are being requested by ASPS and the government to simply stop performing medical procedures, particularly surgery and non-invasives, for at least 2 or 3 weeks. We know that that might extend into 4 to 6 weeks or even 8. Our hope is it's more like 30. But I guess we'll know more soon. We know that that isn't per se really about avoiding the spread of COVID, because surely one doctor performing 2 surgeries on 2 patients with a surgical mask on in a sterile location after washing their hands, the patient's hands, and all of this stuff, there is obviously always some risk or chance, but I don't think that my understanding is that that's why they're trying to stop those couple of little interactions, because there are people touching money. Amazon is delivering, legal offices are open, people are working from home, there is interaction between humans, but rather to conserve medical supplies to ensure that if things do get worse, it's an unknown which locations will get overrun and which will be okay. Things are getting bad in New York City, things can be bad in LA. We don't know where everything's going to go, to make sure that we're doing everything we can to create safety and comfort and minimize risk for those hospitals and make sure that we save Americans anywhere we can. With that said, we're going to be moving all of these cases back, simple as that. And we're going to be dealing with conversations with people who want to cancel consultations, reschedule consultations, as well as, in very rare cases, cancel surgery, or in more often cases, reschedule surgery. So we want to touch on those scenarios, as well as talk about how to structure virtual consultation. So with all that said, let's talk briefly about the virtual consultation. First of all, several of our practices have already moved to 100% virtual consultations for surgery, whether they needed to by law, or whether they just wanted to just kind of get ahead of things or do the right thing. We have one practice, for example, that's already had 13 people move to virtual consultations, approximately, it's the right number, through the end of next week. They're going to probably book 10 or 11 or 12 of them the same day, because it's the exact same structure or concept. We know that with our typical virtual consults, who tend to be out of state and out of country patients who are visiting even during healthy times with no virus, that these patients, if you treat them exactly like a regular consultation, book at exactly the same level as a consultation. And that means in our YellowTelescope practice is probably a booking ratio of 60 to 95%, and usually that 70 to 85% range when done properly. So Ed, I was hoping you could just spend a couple minutes and just walk through what does that consultation look like? And then I'll return to how do we say it on the phone to a patient, whether they're calling to cancel and aren't aware we offer those, or whether it's a new we reach through proactive outgoing or incoming calls for someone who's interested in proceeding but isn't sure how.
Sure. Well, I think, as you mentioned, it's going to be exactly how every other consultation should operate. And of course, we're going to be describing how it typically will operate with a YellowTelescope practice, of course, with our process and implemented. The patient care coordinator, you'll talk a little bit about the messaging, but should be conducting the phone call and setting up the expectations of exactly how that live consultation is going to go. Showing the process of coming in, but just virtually, and talking about the logins that they'll be given, et cetera. Also setting the expectation that they will be meeting with the patient care coordinator first, as it's their job to review a lot of the information, as well as answer as many questions as possible prior to meeting the doctor, and then also confirming that the time frame anticipated for the procedure still works for them, and then also making sure they're still comfortable reserving that date. Then they should be prepping the doctor, maybe even physically, if they're in their office, go into your normal consultation or where you'd see the patient, just ideally have your laptop with the webcam set up. Go do your second date, go see the patient, build some rapport, gather their goals, obviously do the accolades for the doctor or the practice, outline all the details about the procedure, all the way through the recovery and results chronologically, review the ballpark pricing, high, low, anticipated ballpark area where they may be, then reconfirm their time frame based on the cost and recovery for the procedure, narrow it down to that date, remind them what they need to do to be able to reserve it. And of course, the patient should be prepared. They have their wallet. They don't have that excuse because they're certainly sitting at home, right? And so they can go into the next room, go in the kitchen and grab the credit card, just confirm they're still comfortable, making sure they reserve the date. And as an aside, we have the tremendous opportunity to really build urgency right now because, like it or hate it, the number of spots we have within 2020 have automatically decreased, whereas demand we don't think is going to change that much. Everyone's still going to have the same things they'd like to correct or improve, maybe some discretionary spending, maybe, but again, anybody thinking about a $10,000 to $20,000 or $30,000 surgery probably isn't going to be as affected by whatever economic downturn there is. And frankly, if they were, and that's the deal breaker, they probably shouldn't have been doing it anyway financially. So we've got the ability to really build the urgency, and frankly, we are booking up and booking out, even if we do need to make some additional adjustments to the schedule going forward. Then you should be
just to stop there, because you and I cover it. I'm following everything you're saying, but I know it's a lot of information quickly to the listeners, especially if you're out in podcast land over YouTube land, where you have the benefit of seeing us face to face here. And by the way, you can subscribe to this on Spotify, on iTunes. We have 23 past episodes. There's more coming out. You can also watch on our website at YellowTelescope.com, the video version, or go to YouTube, and I think you search the John Hoffenberg YouTube channel. But so what I'm hearing is basically that initial phone call, for those people who don't know Yellow Telescope process, you shouldn't just be having a receptionist schedule people anyway. So even if your people aren't super well trained on our processes, you can make sure they're doing a nice in-depth conversation with anyone who is calling, or if you're proactively reaching out and you reach maybe an old lead and they say, hey, of course I'm interested, but I don't know what to do during coronavirus, so I guess I'll just wait. We're able to say, hey, actually, let me first of all give you some information, a little bit of, but what's your name? Let me get your goals. What are you looking for? So we learn from them first. I heard you say kind of double checking their goals, giving them a little bit of history on doc and the practice, and making sure they're all excited and built up, and then going through some healing and pricing or whatever that you had said there. And then we're scheduling them in the exact same way for a live consultation, only that live consultation would simply be over Skype or Zoom or FaceTime, etc. A quick word on this. I do know that Zoom, Simplast, possibly others have a HIPAA compliant portal for virtual consultations. If you're worried about that, maybe it's a couple $100 a month, and certainly worth it for a couple of months right now. Although I also saw a post earlier from Real Self. I always say double check with an attorney. I don't claim to know the exact details, but they're suggesting that it may be okay, certainly during this time, to conduct conversations, business follow-ups, et cetera, over that, given the specific nature of the circumstance, even if you're just using FaceTime or Skype. And then I hear what you're saying, Ed, is they're coming in for what we call the second date. If the phone call is the first date, they're coming in for that live consultation. Now, they're on the computer, though, instead of coming in live. And we're kind of doing the same thing, right? Educating them a little bit about the doctor, building them up, reviewing pricing, reviewing downtime and healing, double checking that their time frame is still the same. Understand that time frame might be more like May or June or July or August now instead of April or May or whatever, being pushed out a little bit. Quick question for you, and all that makes sense. I would guess within a week, the vast majority, if not all practices, may not be able to be open per se for business in terms of physically. What do we do if literally the coordinator, of course, might be working from home? What are we doing if the office isn't open to be able to conduct that if the doctor can't walk in?
Great point. And I think that at this stage, of course, that does differ a bit from practice to practice based on whatever the regulations might be or even their personal decision. But assuming they're not even in the same facility or same building, they could do something very similar to what you and I are doing right now, whether it's a go-to meeting, whatever format that they determine to be HIPAA compliant, should also have the capability to have several attendees. And so I think that we do want to respect the process because psychologically we know that not having the doctor be on that initial date, or as we say with the patient care coordinator, the pre-doctor consultation, there is the ability for the patient to be, or for the coordinator to be a little bit more directive with the patient, talk about the doctor to build up the value so that even though we like to say that in a live consultation we'll be sort of floating in on the cloud, we like to really build the value in that practitioner or doctor. They should be able to add the doctor at that time, or maybe just send a side message, a text message or something to the doctor to say, we're ready, please join the call now. And
maybe give the doctor a call, so maybe mute them, or like I could put you on mute right now. Let's say you're a patient who wants a facelift or a breast dog or whatever it is that you might want. I would then say, let me put you on mute momentarily. I'm in a conference, doc in. Only I would probably prep him right there too, maybe, and say, hey doc, I wouldn't do it right in the camera. I'd walk off camera for a minute. Doc, I've got the virtual consult ready to go. Sure enough, it's everything we thought over our first call. She wants a tummy tuck procedure. She's looking at July. She's financially ready. She's a little concerned about timing. I let her know that the deposit is refundable till 3 weeks prior, so she's not risking anything by booking right now, but she's ready to go and super excited to meet you. She's 33. She's had 4 kids. She's done having kids. She's in good health. Kind of prep them a little bit. And then the doctor, you're saying, I did press a couple buttons. I know Google Hangout offers this. What we're doing right now is a go-to meeting.
Yeah, of course, Skype offers it.
Whatever it is, Zoom, et cetera, that can do this, and just, add in a third or a fourth or a fifth party so that you guys can all speak together. I'm sorry, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's a great point. And we want to make sure that we're able to prepare the doctor for the type of personality, the type of procedure that they're going into, maybe what the patient is prepared for budget-wise. As we often say, we want to practice good medicine by recommending what the patient is a good candidate for. But of course, if that is the tummy tuck with the breast augmentation and the lift and the lipo and the fat transfer, but at this time, their breasts are really the main priority, and their budget and recovery time only really allows for that procedure to be done, it's nice to know the doctor going in to meet with the patient that they're considering doing things potentially in stages, for example, if, for example, it's just their budget that might not allow it. So really get prepared. I think another thing to sort of be mindful of is the actual location. If you're not in the actual office, and even allow the patient to know that you're in a room, that all the walls are tight, the doors are closed. If people are working from home, make sure the dog's not barking or your spouse walks behind you in the camera or something, because that's going to make people feel very uncomfortable, and again would be a HIPAA violation. So you got to make sure you got the control.
Professionalism.
Yeah, exactly. Have some professionalism. Put a button-down shirt on. I mean, nobody knows that I'm wearing short pants right now, for one.
I was going to ask you if you're wearing any pants right now, Ed.
Exactly.
And you don't have to do that.
No one has to know either way. So make sure that you've got the professionalism, and you're also giving the patient that level of comfort that you're having the exact same level of privacy that they would be having as if they were live in the office, maybe even more so. So then prep the doctor on exactly what they're walking into, add them to the virtual consultation call, and then of course the patient care coordinator at that point should be doing what they normally do, which is generally be a fly on the wall, smiling, also potentially taking notes in the system. Maybe mute yourself so that you can be typing directly into your patient now, your next tech, your Simplast, so that you've got your notes going into the system about what's actually occurring. And then maybe even preparing the price quote based on whatever the doctor is recommending. And then you've actually got the ability to, instead of hand them a physical paper quote, you can either do a screen share so that you can actually show them the quote so that that person is looking at exactly what you're looking at. Or you could even just create a PDF and email it to them as well, because they're on their laptop and they can open up that attachment. And then essentially, once the doctor's provided the recommendations, at that time they can say, any other questions? You sure? No other questions. I've got a few more minutes. If you have any more questions, none at all, great. You know, Sally will be able to take good care of you. John will be able to take good care of you, get you scheduled. Thanks so much for your patience, obviously, during this time. We're really excited to have you as a patient, and when the time is right, and she'll get you scheduled. Then the doctor can end the call at that point if they wish, and so that it should then also just be the patient coordinator and the patient at that time, just as it would be live in the office. And then, of course, as we say at this stage, all you really have to do is smile, present price, and ask them how they'd like to reserve the date.
AFTO, ask for the order. Ask for the order. AFTO, ask for the order. You can grunt in their general direction for all we care, as long as you get a yes or a no back, like, eh?
Huh? They know what's coming.
Yeah, so great. In other words, it's business as usual. It's just virtual business as usual. Now, a couple little caveats. One is that the patient may be sort of wondering, well, do I ever get to meet the doctor? I mean, this is great. You've done the exam. I feel 99% sure. Well, one of the things we tell every patient, partially because you want to give the real medical advice and final medical recommendation live, as the doctors know, is the doctor also should be saying, and the patient coordinator can cover over the initial phone call when they schedule it, as well as on the live consultation. Even though we're reserving your date today for surgery, it's refundable till 3 weeks prior. You can change your dates till 3 weeks prior, so there's no risk in scheduling. And second, of course, during your preoperative appointment, the doctor will be re-meeting with you, doing a physical examination, confirming the plan that we think is likely the plan by phone. So on the off, very, very minute, infinitesimal chance that things change, we can of course address that, but you will meet him before, and it's not like you'll just walk into the office the day of surgery, and we coordinate it that way, and that allays some of those fears. So let me talk briefly about the phone call that leads in it. So Ed has now talked about, you know, the process for the virtual consultation, what to do over the phone, how to present price. And again, we should be presenting that price over the phone, even verbally. We should be collecting the credit card right here over the webinar, over the podcast, over the whatever you want to call it, over the virtual consultation. It shouldn't be, I'll call you back with a quote. It shouldn't be, I'll email you a quote and let me know. It's, we'll go ahead and reserve you now so you can hold the date, but it's refundable and the date is changeable, so you take no risk whatsoever, because that's when they want to hold the date. There really is no harm that way. So let's talk about how we actually generate these virtual consults. I'm going to talk a little bit about philosophy. One of the things that we are seeing in the market, and by the market I mean literally the stock market, the American market, the practices markets, is obviously massive, unbelievable levels of fear, unlike the likes of which we haven't seen since 2008 or before. Much of that is well-founded. Like I said, it goes without saying, some of this is real and there's reason to worry and all that stuff. Some of it is not. Some of this stuff is not well-founded. Some of our assumptions that we're making are incorrect. And the great news is, even though we don't have unlimited data, we've got relatively big data for our industry. So over the last, let's say, week, between Ed, Dan Grantham, and myself, we've talked to, I don't know, upwards of 60 to 75 practices, let's say, that are all over the country, from LA to New York to the small cities in between, from the Rust Belt to the Bible Belt to big city to left wing to right wing to whatever. And one of my assumptions was, oh gosh, there's going to be a ton of people calling to cancel their surgery. Just, this is going to freak people out. That is not true. And if you're listening to this, you know that's not true. Now, there have been the occasional individuals. I think we had 6 or 7 at the end of the week that we counted among all 3 practice or all 3 consultants. 6 human beings, 7 human beings that canceled surgery, and then maybe there was another handful or 2 that moved their date. So people do want surgery right now. They would be coming in today and tomorrow if you're open for business. If the government didn't say you can't do it, you'd be busy as can be. In fact, lots of people are trying to get in ASAP before that state outlaws it, so they can get their surgery and heal at home. So yes, people are worried broadly, but they actually want their surgery. And so we found that when we move surgeries or move consultations, almost everybody is receptive. The cancellation rate has been minimal. Now, we do know over time cancellations are going to increase a little bit for consultations and surgery, because a small percentage of the population are going to lose their jobs or have financial instability, but that's not the majority. One of the things I've reminded people is that we're at, let's say, a 3 or 4% unemployment rate right now. During the 2008 crash, it got to about 10%, which was like a year or two later, if memory serves. It was a long time in the future, which is like the worst we've seen since the Great Depression. That's unbelievable levels of unemployment. That's only about 5 or 6% more than we're at right now. 5 or 6% means 1 in every 20 people would lose their job. So I don't want to minimize that because that would put a huge strain on the economy, and there are other people who will be financially burdened. But this idea that even if the economy gets bad, that 100% of people are going to cancel, or that half, or that 3/4, or even that 80% would cancel, or even 20% would cancel, excuse me, is just not true. So there could be some pain, but I also want to put in perspective what even almost a worst case scenario is likely to look like. Now, obviously, if this becomes the end of days, we've got bigger fish to fry and nothing matters anyway. But most likely the significant scenario is that this is going to have an economic impact. We'll have a recession. Once most people get sick, they'll get better, and then the economy will be bad, but we'll mostly keep our cases. So the question then is, how do we deal with people that are calling in to cancel consultations, which is much more than surgery? The surgery patients are very simple. Contact anyone you need to move. Show total confidence and calm. Tell them the truth. And we've already had practices do this, and there's been no pushback, and say, we need to move you. I do recommend moving them to the soonest possible date, even though doctors said, well, Jon, I don't even know if they say a 2-week delay. What if they mean 4 weeks? They probably do. And you will probably need to move those people twice. I'd rather move people 2 weeks or 4 weeks instead of just pushing them out to October, because the very worst case is we move people twice. Sometimes success is messy. I'd rather have that inconvenient conversation than have them all booked for October and then find out everything's okay by May 1st and we're scrambling for cases for the whole summer. But we haven't had any pushback. People are very comfortable moving back. They'd rather get it done sooner, actually, not later. And so just call them and say, hi, is this Ed? Hey, this is Jon over at Dr. Smith's office. I hope that you're doing well. Hey, well, it's not a surprise why I'm calling. I'm sure you're aware with coronavirus, the government has asked, mostly as a courtesy, not as a mandate or requirement or law, that we do move cases back to protect supplies in case the hospitals do get overrun. We're certainly hoping that isn't the case. We're praying it's not the case. We want to do everything we can as good citizens, as a good practice to support the community. And as such, we will need to move your case back a little bit. As of now, they're recommending us booking them 31 days from now. We don't expect it to be delayed again. I'd like to get you the very first available date that works for your schedule and ours. By getting you the very first available date, there's a very small chance I may need to call you again and push it back ever so slightly more. But I'd rather do that than have you booked for next year, something crazy, and then meanwhile we're wide open in a month and you delay your timing. There's no charge to change your date. We're keeping you grandfathered into current rates, and we just simply would move the date back. If you have a quick second, I'd like to find a date for you, and that's it. And they move back, and everyone's good. If you get the rare cancellation, you do. When we are seeing the occasional delay even further or cancellation, it's been usually for good reason. We had someone whose daughter was in Paris getting ready to have a rhinoplasty. Well, clearly she can't come home, so we needed to delay that. Her mom was super excited to still get it done, but just we figured it'll be more like late summer or midsummer. We had another person who lived with their parent who is in their, I think, 70s or 80s and just felt safer waiting. I think that's a reasonable choice. And last is someone with a really serious pre-existing condition. They have diabetes with hypertension and et cetera. A respiratory issue, of course, they probably are prudent to hunker down. So that leads to what to do about people calling to cancel consultations. The first thing that we always do, just like someone canceling surgery, is we agree, we repeat back what we heard, we let them know it's no problem before we give them the but. And the but will be logic, like, hey, we have a virtual consultation and you're home anyway. So, hi, it's Barbara. I wanted to go ahead and cancel my appointment because I figured you guys are like all closed up or whatever anyway. Hey, first of all, Susie, was it Barbara? Hey, Barbara, first of all, thank you so much for calling. Really appreciate you taking the moment to give us a buzz. Certainly no problem. It's our pleasure to get you a refund for your surgery. It's our pleasure to move your appointment or move it back. Hey, a couple of things before I do cancel you out. First, you are correct that we are minimizing patients in office over the next month. So technically for surgery, we are moving those back, but we are certainly open for business. In fact, we're going to have a very, very busy summer, which is something that Ed kind of alluded to earlier in our podcast. We are going to have a very, very busy summer because A, we were already booked out quite a bit before this whole Corona thing. Second, everybody does want their surgery. They're really only delaying because they kind of have to. And third, we're going to be bunching that whole next month and a half worth of patients into more of a summertime schedule. So we're going to be very, very full. So I'm concerned about simply moving your date back for a live consultation, although you're welcome to do so if you wish. What I would recommend instead, Barbara, is we are conducting, which you may not even be aware of, but we're conducting virtual consultations. Think of it as exactly the same thing for all intents and purposes. We send you an email with a very simple link that you click. It opens up into sort of a webinar kind of type thing where you can see the doctor and the doctor can see you. I jump on for a few minutes and do the same portion I would do if you came here live. Doc jumps on and does a simple examination and makes this recommendation. And then if for any reason you don't love them, of course you'd keep searching, but assuming that things go very well and you feel very comfortable with the doctor, what we do is we then reserve your date with your typical deposit, just like we had talked about last time, which is 20% of the total. It's refundable till 3 weeks prior, that whole thing. That way we can get you that summer date that you're very likely to want, and then one of a couple things will happen. Either the dates will work great and at least you got the date. We will still see you in your live consultation, which is to say after we do the virtual consultation during your preoperative appointment about 3 weeks prior, doc is still gonna meet with you face-to-face, do an exam, spend a few minutes, just make sure there's no changes or anything he missed, however unlikely, so you can still feel good you're gonna see the doctor. So in case we reserve your date, you get grandfathered in at current rates. You don't get bumped back to the fall that way or till later summer dates. And plus we figure you got time, you already had the time taken out when you were busy. Now everyone's stuck at home, and to be quite honest, it's an entertaining hour of your life. We're all looking for some things to do. So what I'm doing is I'm projecting honest urgency. We actually are pretty booked out, true. We are gonna have a busy summer as long as this thing passes, true. You should get on the virtual consultation so you reserve your date because there's no risk, true. And you don't want to miss out on a date, true. And it's the exact same thing, plus you're still going to meet him live, true. And we're not worried, and we are busy, and there's honest urgency, and you really shouldn't delay, true. So it's not that we're faking it and saying if you don't, you'll never get a date, Mrs. Smith. We're also not saying things are slow. The government told us not to do surgery for a month, so therefore we canceled all consultations, all work. We're just crying at home while everyone else is eating our lunch. That's not going to help either. And so those are two examples we've given to kind of finish this sort of long thought of how to deal with people calling to cancel consultations or calling to cancel or move surgery. It's the exact same conversation when someone calls in that's a new lead, because we are still getting calls, we are still getting leads. In fact, internet usage is going to go up. I think people are freaking out. I read an article saying Netflix is taking almost too many download speeds or whatever, and so the internet's slowing down. But people have free time, so they're going to be looking. I don't know if leads are going to go up or not, but there's going to be people online all the time and asking questions. So when we do either get an incoming lead, which they are still going to flow, if not as well as before, at least they will flow, or B, we're proactive, which we're going to talk about momentarily, and we reach someone by calling leads that we've been trying for weeks or months, following up with thousands, if not tens of thousands of old leads in your database to proactively reach people. It's the same call, we just explain it. Hey, Barbara, how are you? I've been following up with you on and off for a few weeks, wanted to connect with you. How's everything going today? How great. Well, one of the things you might have heard is that a lot of the offices are closing. Actually, we're not technically that case. We are moving our surgical cases back, but we're sort of business as usual here. I was hoping to chat with you a little bit and let you know about our virtual consultations we're doing over the next 30 days to avoid you missing out on the surgery you had emailed us that you're interested in. Did you have a couple minutes so I can go through everything? And I do my normal call that you outlined before, Ed. So nothing changes other than we may need to be proactive. So that's how we're specifically word track wise dealing with movement as well as brand new leads and explaining the concept, power, and usefulness and positivity of a virtual contest. I only wish I could do all my dermatology appointments, all my pediatrics appointments for my kid, everything virtually. I love it. It's not a punishment, it's a blessing. Although some of it is a sales pitch, some of it's very true and there's real value in it. So it's all about how you present your business and your practice. You could be the practice we just talked about with 13 consults booked over the next week, or you could be at home. We're just going to cancel everything. And we hope a lot of people do that aren't our clients, so we can go ahead and take their business, quite honestly.